Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our speaker today, Marci Malzahn. In 2014, Marci started her own bank consulting firm that focuses on strategic planning, enterprise risk management, and talent management for community banks. And she also does public speaking on a variety of topics. So welcome, Marci.
Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for that introduction. Thank you for having me here. I am super excited to be here. And when I asked Kelly, what do you want me to talk about? Because I can talk about a lot of things, and I can talk a lot too. But anyway, she's like, I want you to combine your inspirational story with risk management. And I'm like, okay, inspiration and risk management probably doesn't go, but I think that's great, and that's perfect. So I want to share first what we're going to go through. I'm going to share about my personal story and then my banking story, and then from there I'm going to leave you with great tips for you to take home. How can community banks survive and thrive in today's environment? And let me start by saying I love banking, and I am originally from Nicaragua, just so you don't wonder where my accent is from during my presentation, so you can pay attention. They say that when you learn a foreign language by the age of 10, that you don't have an accent in that language. Well, I learned it at 11 as an exchange student, so I missed the deadline. And I'm stuck. Okay. So, Nicaragua, I don't know, when I came here a long time ago, people couldn't even pronounce Nicaragua. And so I made pictures for you. And those are, Nicaragua is in the center of the entire continent of America. And I don't know if you guys know, it's the second poorest country in the continent after Haiti. So I grew up there until I was 13 years old, and I'll go through some of the things that I went through. The first thing is, in 1972, the earthquake. There were about 10,000 people that died, and I guess when earthquakes happen only about a mile from the surface, they're the worst. So I thought instead of putting words, I would show you with pictures what the earthquake was about. So that was my first life event that I went through in Nicaragua. Then during 78, 79, the war started against the 66-year dictatorship of the Somoza family in Nicaragua. And so the population, as you can see, there's a child there. If you could lift 50 pounds or a machine gun, they would send you to war, even at as young as 13, 14 years old. And then on the other picture, you can see the just people from the villages that they were sending to the war. The sign there, the black and red, FSLN, don't worry, I won't make anyone repeat it, is the Frente Sandinista de Liberación Nacional. The Sandinistas, I don't know, some of you may remember this, they took Sandino's last name. He was a nationalist, and so the population thought they were fighting against getting rid of this dictatorship. They didn't know that the Cubans and Russians were behind the country at that time to support the communism coming into the country. So they went from dictatorship to communism. The bottom line is we had to flee the country. And my dad's sister married a Dominican, and that was the only country we could flee to. And we left in a red cargo plane from the Red Cross. That's a whole other story in itself. So we went to Dominican Republic in June of 1979, about 4 weeks before the revolution won. And so my aunt, they changed one of the bedrooms. They converted it into the office. They changed it into a bedroom for my parents. We're 6 kids. I'm number 2. My dad is an attorney and a composer. My mom is an entrepreneur. So the kids, when we left, were 14 years old down to 1.5. So they made this, converted this office into a bedroom, and then the 5 other kids, they put us in the garage. So I lived in a garage for like 2 months. Imagine that June in the Caribbean with the bugs and the mice or whatever else shows up in your garage in the summer, we have to go through. And you know when you're trying to sleep and you get the, the mosquitoes, and it's so hot and you're supposed to, anyways, but we weren't thinking about the mosquitoes or the mice or anything like that. We were thinking, we're free. We don't have to go to war. I don't have to go to bed listening to machine guns in the background or helicopters or bombing. So that's what happened. So after 2 months, we moved to a 2-bedroom apartment. Remember, we're 8 people. In the 4th floor of this building that was brick and mortar. It was like a U-shaped. And in August of 1979, the Hurricane David, almost 200 miles an hour wind hurricane comes to the island, destroys the island. So we spent 4 months with no electricity, no water. I'm still 13, okay? So I finished school there, high school, and then I started there like 3 months, 3/4 of college. And then we decided to move to Minnesota. And you would wonder, why on earth would you ever move to Minnesota from the Caribbean? Well, we wanted to come here as legal immigrants, which we did. And my mom started a business in Dominican Republic, and she opened a branch legally on paper in Miami, Florida. So then the 2 oldest kids and my parents could come here with working visas. So we came here. I came in January of 1986. I was the 3rd one because every kid came at a different time. I was like 19 then. And so I came to a family in the city of St. Paul. So new country, new job. And then I started my career in banking in June of 1986 at Marquette Banks. And I thought I spoke English until I came here, and then you guys started speaking to us really fast. And with all the slangs, I remember the first time I heard, "Oh, that's a piece of cake." And I'm like, piece of cake? Okay, I know cake, piece of cake, what the heck? So I'm still learning English. In fact, one of my favorite apps is dictionary.com. So I'm looking up words all the time. So I started as a teller because I thought, okay, I like to work with money, people, and computers. So I thought, oh, a teller job. In fact, when I was a little girl, we used to play Monopoly with all my siblings, and I was always the banker. I always had all my money arranged. I gave them all, distributed it. And of course, I always gave my siblings loans so they could pay me when they landed on the railroad stations. Remember those? And I always got those, so that was really fun. And okay, so then I started my career in banking at Marquette Banks. I was there for like 13 years, and I had 9 jobs. I was promoted like every year and a half, every 2 years, so I learned a ton from teller to branch manager. And then I decided I'm working too much. My kids then were like 10 and 8, and I decided to leave banking altogether and move to the nonprofit. I worked for a 501c3, a church. And this church the reason this is important is because it helped me later. It had like 10,000 members at that time, like 330 employees, and a budget of like $34 million. So it was a big company. And when I was there about 5 years, and I picked up 3 more things that I didn't have from banking. I started as a Y2K project manager. You remember Y2K? We're here, we made it, right? So Y2K project manager, how do you do that? Well, I figured it out. And after 6 months, the head of finance, which in a nonprofit is like your CFO, she passed away. So then the IT director got promoted to that position, and the senior pastor asked me to be IT director. And I'm like, okay. The only reason I said yes is because my husband is an IT guy, and he told me what to do. So I'm like, okay, honey, train me good, and he's here too. Train me so I think I know. Anyway, so I was IT director, and then a year later, the lady that was in finance decided to retire. So the pastor asked me to be the head of finance. So now I had finance, IT, and HR. And the reason why that's important is because during all this time, these 5 years, I stayed in touch with all my previous friends from banking, including one of my ex-bosses. And he called me up in the summer of 2004, and he's like, I left my job as a president of a bank. I want to start a bank. And I said, that's awesome. I said, this is your dream. I think that's great. And he's like, thank you. You're the first person that tells me I'm not stupid for leaving my president job. And I said, but that's your dream. You want to start a bank. So we kept talking about it, and I thought, okay. I called him up on a Sunday afternoon, and I said, okay, let's start the bank. And I said, but this time, I said, I don't want to be in lending. I was already a branch manager, and I was getting into small business lending. I said, this time, I want to be the CFO of the bank, and I want to learn to run the bank as a business. And he said, deal. So never lose your connections when you go away, even from industry, because you don't know if you're going to come back. And he knew what I could do, and he believed in me, and I so appreciate that. So I'm like, okay, let's start a bank. And then I'm like, this is January of 2005. I'm at home because we didn't have the bank yet. We had 6 months to start the bank, and I'm like, how do you start a bank? Oh my gosh. So I asked him, buy me Microsoft project. It's just a big project. We're going to break it out into pieces. So I ended up with 517 items to get done in 6 months. Some of them took me 20 minutes, and the biggest one took me about 60 hours. I went about 18 months with no days off. By July 1st, which was our day to start the bank, I was exhausted. Starting a bank is not just like starting any other company. It's a bank. In fact, my IT guy that I hired to do the beginning of the bank, he's like, did you know that the banks are more regulated than a nuclear plant? And I'm like, I'm not sure I wanted to know that. Like, nuclear plants can explode. And I'm like, well, banks can explode too, but anyways, so what a journey. It was amazing. Starting a bank is everything. And of course, I was just the first employee, but we started with a team of people that we did this, and it's all these emotions together of challenging, exciting, funny, and fun, and I don't know, I think I cried too during that time, I don't know. It was just all of these emotions, and as an immigrant to start a bank was a big deal. So despite all these regulations, Americans do like banks, and they love community banks. So the role of the president when we started this was to raise capital, get the shareholders, get the board together. And we raised $10,879,000. This is back then, 2005. I think nowadays they need like 24 million is the last time I read something about that. So that was his role, and then I was in charge of starting the rest. So we started hiring people, of course, and hiring the right people to do this was huge. So I oversaw everything until December of 2013, when I promoted all my employees and I had everything except the lending and sales. So IT, operations, finance, compliance, internal audit, all of those. So I had the great opportunity to start from scratch this bank and to create the infrastructure for all of these different areas in the bank. So I wanted to make sure that everything was scalable and according to all the regulations. And this is my motto. I really, truly believe in doing things right, doing the right thing, do things right the first time consistently. Because when you do that, then a lot of things happen. What does it mean to do the right thing? Well, establishing best practices across the organization from the start. Not cutting corners while being frugal is very challenging, but it can be done because we did it. And then when you automatically start creating efficiencies that contribute to the bottom line, which is the shareholder value, that's how it works. So what helped me? 13 years in banking and 5 years in nonprofit, but also what really helped me is that I had been in their shoes. Everything from the teller position to all the CFO, COO, and all those positions that you can have. So I really understand what kind of people we need, for the different types of positions in the bank. So how do you start? How do you start it all? What's doing the right thing? Well, you start with the strategic plan. You start with your vision. Where do you want to go? Where are you going with these people in this bank? Knowing your core values is crucial for any organization, because from there you hire the right people. And you say, who are the right people? Well, they're the people that believe and follow your core values. Knowing your mission, why do you exist? What makes you a unique bank? What's your unique value proposition? A lot of banks say, well, we offer exceptional customer service. Well, what does that mean to your employees? And what does it mean to your clients that you offer this exceptional customer service? And then the next step is integrating the enterprise risk management up to your strategic plan. And a lot of people are afraid of enterprise risk management. They're like, well, what is ERM? Well, it's not that complicated. I think a lot of people are afraid, but I actually think it's simple. It's first you identify all your risks through risk assessment throughout the organization, then you mitigate or eliminate, and then you monitor and report to the board on an ongoing basis. And then you start by doing the ERM risk assessment to cover all your areas of the bank. You have to know your regulations, and you have to know your industry. For example, I know that if a bank wants to start, let's say, lending to hotels, the first question that the regulators are going to ask, do you have the expertise in-house? So CNI, do you have the expertise? Commercial real estate, do you have the expertise? So establishing policies to comply with all the regulations, of course, and then from there you establish procedures and processes to help you comply with your policies, which in turn will help you comply with the regulations. So establishing an organizational and operational infrastructure to support your current size and then also where you're going, that is very important as well. And then establishing and putting together key performance indicators as well as key risk indicators. The audit committees look at the key KPIs, the key performance indicators, they look at your past. The risk committee looks at your future. So that's when the key risk indicators come into play. The next step is integrating the other components to the ERM. So your IT security program would come next, let's say, in the disaster recovery and the business continuity. And a lot of people think that the disaster recovery and business continuity are the same, but the disaster recovery just helps you recover from the disaster. And then how are you going to continue moving forward to make money? Then the cybersecurity. Again, another thing that boards of directors need to be trained on, and what is their liability? What are you doing in your bank for the cybersecurity? And then vendor management. Those two things are key right now for regulators. The vendor management, I believe that in order to survive, one of the key things is to outsource everything that you can, but when you outsource, you have to know your vendors and your vendors' vendors. So doing due diligence on all your vendors is crucial for your bank to be successful. And then, of course, you move on to the compliance program, integrating that. That's all pieces of the big puzzle. The internal audit program, and then the liquidity contingency plan. And then, of course, integrating the marketing program and then the capital plan. There's only two ways you can grow your bank, either retaining your earnings, organically growing, or by acquisition. Either way, you need capital. So the last piece here also is the talent management, integrating that into your strategic plan. So conducting a talent assessment, do you have the right people in the right places, and also what are the right places for your organization right now, and then from your projections of where you're going. Establishing a succession plan is also crucial. When I talk to banks, a lot of them don't have a succession plan even today, and I think that succession planning should be done at all levels, not just the CEO and president, the management, the board, like all your board chairs for audit committees and ALCO and loan, all of those board chairs. And also succession planning for all those important positions, especially in community banks where you have one person doing 5 things. The person that has been there 20, 30 years, that if they go, everything goes in their head, if they leave the bank or whatever, or retire. So you have to have succession planning for those positions as well. And then succession planning for shareholders. And they're your capital retention. What are your strategies to keep the capital in your bank? So board training and then ongoing all staff education and training is key. So how can community banks survive and thrive in these times? I think Americans love community banks. They want to bank with us, but they want 3 things. The main thing is, they're all the same, I think, as far as importance. Convenience. They want everything from the branch to the watch. I'm sure now we're going to be doing stuff on the iPhone or the iWatch or whatever. When the ATMs came out, they thought that they were going to replace the branches. Nope, now we want both. Then internet banking, then online banking, then mobile banking. The problem is that now consumers, they want them all and for free. So we have to figure out a way to provide all of those services, absorb the cost, and give it to them for free. Because why? Because the other guys are doing it. So operational efficiencies across the board is going to be crucial. And utilizing the technology, becoming efficient and effective in your banks. The other thing they want, of course, is safety. They want to make sure in 2 ways, that their money is safe, meaning your financial institution is not going to go away, and number 2, that their data and confidentiality is safe. So how do you do that? It's all about enterprise risk management. And then service. They don't want just good, excellent, outstanding. Now they want superb. and customized. They want to know that you know what they have, what services they have, and then give them the top of the top. Why? Because everybody says they can give good customer service, but what makes you unique? Going back to that. So I think also, okay, how can we do it all? Collaboration. I think that sharing resources with other banks, for example, I'm hearing some banks are sharing compliance officers or internal auditors or, I don't know, some services like that, like accounts payable, things like that you can share. Correspondent bank services using companies like United Bankers Bank and other banks that, like Wells Fargo and US Bank, they're large banks, but they also work with community banks. So take advantage of those services. And then the regulators. Working together with the regulators, we don't want to go against them. And we should collaborate with them and ask in advance. Same thing, if you're going to start a new product, a new division, a new service, ask them, is this something that, what ideas do you have or suggestions? And it's, for example, I have a great example of how we should do this. If you see, because sometimes we think regulators are the bad people, and they're not. They're just people like us doing their job, like police officers. Okay, you see a sign that says speed limit 40, and I'm doing 53. I'm violating the law, right? So, which is exactly what happened to me the other day. And this is around my house, so I couldn't claim the I don't know this area thing. So I go around and I'm doing, I think, 50 something, I don't know. And then you know that feeling when you see the cop right there and you're like, oh no, he saw me, there's no way. Woo, he comes out. And then he's like, so I stop and I'm like, oh no. So he's like, ma'am, and I'm like, now I'm mad, he called me ma'am. So I'm like, ma'am, you know how fast you were going? And I'm like, fast? I'm like, I don't know, fast? And he's like, yeah, you were doing 53 on a 40. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'm sorry. It's these boots. Every time I wear these boots, they make me speed because I don't feel the pedals. And then he doesn't say anything. And I'm like, oh, no. He's like, can I have your driver's license and registration? So I give it to him, and he goes back to his car. And I'm thinking, oh, my God, boots? What does he care? He's going to go back and laugh at the police station and say, you won't believe this crazy woman with the boot story. So then he comes back. And he's like, well, ma'am, today I'm going to let you go with a warning. And I'm like, he believed my boot story? I'm like, okay. He's like, okay, well, thank you so much. He's like, well, have a good day and don't speed. And I'm like, okay. The point of this, I laughed all the way to wherever I was going. I'm like, I can't believe it was true, actually. Those boots make me speed. It's true. Maybe that's why he believed me, because he was so sincere, So anyways, the point of the story is, and this is what I told my employees, when we're in ignorance and we don't know our regulation, then the regulators may have grace and favor. We may have favor with them, and they give you a warning. And they say, okay, here's the law, here's the regulation, you're missing it, you need to fix it. So those are the findings that we must fix. And there's one thing that regulators say, and that is repeat violations. You all know, you've heard that, repeat violation. And so that was the point of that story, of sharing that. The other stories, I think that because they're good, I believe that everybody's good. We're all good people. And I'm sure you'll find some mean regulator somewhere, but I think overall they're good people, and they're just doing their job. They're showing us, they're telling us, they're teaching us. So we had the last exam at the bank where I was before, was from the FDIC, and we had an IT examiner from St. Louis. He was the best IT examiner I've ever known. And so we had our preliminary visit with my IT guy and me and him, so the three of us. And those of you who know me know you get to know me so easily, and I get to know you so quick. So I started asking him personal questions, like, where are you from? Do you like flying? He's like, no, actually, I hate flying. So I drove from St. Louis. So we started talking where he lives, and he's like, yeah, in fact, I bought a farm. And he started telling me that he bought a farm, and he bought 10 cows. And I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, and then my stupid dog barked, and all my cows got scattered. So this was just as he had bought the farm. So he had to call the neighbors and say, hey, if you see a cow in your backyard, that's my cow, can you return it? The point is, we were getting to know each other. When the regulator leaves the room, my IT guy goes, you're good. And I'm like, I'm just being me. I'm getting to know the guy, So then next meeting, after a week or whatever, we get together. He was starting to tell us the pre-exit findings or whatever. He hadn't found anything, by the way. So I keep asking him questions, and I said, how do you keep up with IT and all of these? I said, how do you keep up with all the regulations and how do you get trained? Tell me about your background, where you go to school or whatever. So then he tells me that he was in the military and that when he was in his 40s, they sent him to Iraq, I think, I don't know, and he came back and his back was hurting. It was really bad on his body and all that. So then I started telling him, like, thank you so much. I have the utmost respect for our military because it is because of people like you that people like me can come to this country and be free. And then I started crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the regulator. What am I doing? And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm like, my employees are going to think you're mean. You're making Marci cry. Like, and then we started laughing. So the whole point, so at this point, my IT guy goes, you're really good. And I'm like, I didn't mean to. I just really love the military and what they do for us. So anyway, so those are my stories. Get to know your regulators. They're people. They want to collaborate and help you be a successful bank. So the next point, how can we do it all? Standardization. I think that if we establish procedures and processes across the bank with consistency, that is going to be the key. Consistency is key to efficiency. And I am finding out as I talk to banks in my new company now that procedures vary from branch to branch. So the perfect example is new account opening. It sometimes varies from person to person. One personal banker may do it a little different than the next person, and if you do it online account opening versus in-person account opening, they change it. So you have to be consistent, so then it's more efficient. And with efficiencies, at the end of the road, you're going to create shareholder value. So centralization. There are many functions that you can centralize. For example, credit analysis, deposit, loan operations, all of those things. Maybe your banks can find a way to train and cross-train people so you can be more efficient and centralize those. And also designating people within the organization that can become experts at certain things, that will really help as well. So the next thing, what other ideas do I have? Well, outsourcing. I think that doing things like HR functions and accounts payable, and I do have a story on that with talk about doing due diligence. The accounts payable vendor that we used at the bank, they suffer a major infrastructure disaster. 2 of their main servers crashed to the point that the owner could not replace them and he had to shut down operations. So in 30 days, we had to find a new AP vendor. And we weren't ready. We were not ready. So it took us like 6 months of pain to get through that change. So that's part of the vendor management. So then audits like compliance, loan, deposit, IT audits and financial audits, all of those should be outsourced. And then the core system. A lot of people have these questions. Should I bring it in-house or should we do the service bureau? I think it really depends on your organization. But also keep in mind that the IT people that you need for Fiserv or Jack Henry or any of your core system, they're different skills than your network administrator, PC support type person. So you may consider to do IT managed services. You outsource your IT department and maybe keep in-house the core system experts, for example, or work in combination or in collaboration with them. Then the next thing, education and training. I think it's really important that when things go bad, companies usually cut education and training. And so employees, to keep the top talent, directors, so they know their liabilities, and then clients for cyber threats and identity theft. This picture here, that's my car. That just happened to me on Saturday night. I was at an event, and when my husband and I walked up to our car, he's like, oh no, the window's broken. And I'm like, oh no, my purse. And what happened was that I switched purses to a smaller purse, and I put my bigger bag in the back, and I thought black carpet, black seats, black purse, tinted windows, they're not gonna see it. Well, with a flashlight you can't, though. So they broke it, I think, the old-fashioned way, and they stole my purse. Now, I had with me my driver's license, my personal and business cards, but they stole my checkbook, which has my home address and my driver's license number and my ATM card. So again, now, how many of you have had your purse stolen, wallet stolen? Raise your hand. So I'm one of you now. It's like, you know that feeling of, oh my gosh, now I'm more afraid of identity theft, because I could stop the ATM, I called and canceled the card right away because my husband had it, and the 800 number is right there on the back of his card, and I'm like, okay, if I didn't have my card because it's gone, where do you call? Well, it's usually on your bank's website, so I did have my phone, so we called the insurance company, we called that, and by the time I called, which I'm assuming must have been about an hour since the incident, there were already 3 transactions to Best Buy, and they were probably done online over the phone right there. So using the same technology for good and bad, for me, I looked online at my transactions, and I saw these transactions. I mean, they were like $800 ones and $500 and $400. But at the same time, I had this other idea. I transferred all my money from the checking, our money, honey, sorry. We transferred all the money to another account that didn't have access to the card. So I thought if the canceled card doesn't go through quickly, at least there won't be any money, and the system should return, or reject this transaction. So educating our customers on cyber threats. And I think this is something that the examiners are going to start asking of us, to go train your client, your business clients, what's dual controls, the segregation of duties, and all of those concepts that they're careless sometimes, especially the smaller businesses. So just keeping in mind things like that. Doing training like the BSA, that's a required training, but there's other training that we can do for our staff that is not required, but it's good. And then internal training, cross-training, and then of course external, there's a lot of free webinars out there that we can take advantage of. And then learning from our regulators and auditors. And then lastly, the succession planning at all levels, to consider that. So, in conclusion, I hope that I have inspired you to not give up on banking, to continue the fight. We can do this. Banking is fun. I love the business of banking, and Americans do love community banks. They want to support the local banks, and so, but they want 3 things. Remember, convenience, they want it all and for free. They want safety of their data and their money. And they want service, not just good or outstanding or excellent. They want superb service. And if you don't remember anything from today, just remember these. Strive to do the right thing and do things right the first time and consistently, and that will really help you. And there was a story too that I wanted to share when there was somebody that asked me when we were starting the bank, because this is important, I guess, for everyone who's doing anything going forward in your banks as they grow. She said, "Did you ever know how to start a bank?" And I'm like, "No, I figured it out." "How did you ever know how to do it?" And I said, I just figured it out. But I said, she said, "Weren't you scared?" And I said, "Well, after surviving an earthquake, a war, a hurricane, living in 3 countries, coming here at 19 with my suitcase, no, I wasn't scared. But," I said, "I don't do anything alone. I do it with people. And we hire the right people, so you have to have the right team. And," I said, "with God's help, I can do anything." So just remember that, establishing best practices, hiring the right people, integrating your ERM program into your strategic plan, and then the talent management piece as well. And I know all that works because I've done it. So that's it. Thank you. So, I hope you wrote some questions to ask me, because we have some time, right? We have a few minutes for questions. So, I should have planted questions. Did you know that they plant questions? So, okay.